Hi, I'm going to talk about what I did for the Learn and Explore assignment for Graphic Communications 3400. I think I'm going to start off with a little preview about what I did. So I made a little web game in JavaScript called blackjackjs, aptly named because it is a crude implementation of blackjack made in JavaScript. This was my first foray into JavaScript, so it's pretty rough around the edges, as I've stated, but I think it's acceptable for my first try. If you want to look at the source code, it happens to be on my GitHub page. Here it is. And if you want to actually play the game, you can click on this link in my GitHub repository, which will take you to my website, which is also hosted on GitHub, and it's right here, jackieF1.com. What I actually followed, the tutorial, was a lynda.com tutorial called Learning the JavaScript Language. It's about a 3-hour course by this gentleman, Joe Chelman, and I think it was pretty good. Can't really complain about it. During the actual creation of my project, I used this little cheat sheet right here quite extensively because I'm still new at the language, so this really came in handy, especially stuff like data type section right here and the variables right here. In addition to that, I use the Mozilla JavaScript reference as well quite a bit. This is really nice. Very well laid out, gives you some examples as to how you would use different functions in JavaScript. Now, as to how long I actually spent on the project, I spent about 3 hours on the videos I said before, and I watched it all in one sitting, or 2 sittings rather, and there wasn't really any tutorials to there wasn't any work that was to be done alongside the tutorial. Rather, the include files were just a transcript of what the gentleman was talking or coding. And I spent about 6 to 8 hours thereabout on the actual product, much more than the required 3 hours, but that was because I was pretty inexperienced in JavaScript, and I had quite a bit of trouble that I asked my friend for a couple times, who was a little bit more experienced in the language. So why did I want to learn JavaScript? Well, I've wanted to learn JavaScript for quite a while, for at least a semester or so, and I figured that now is a good time as any to actually start learning. So that's what I did. I also have like the Lynda subscription, so I might as well take advantage of it. I want to learn JavaScript because it can be used in a web development environment as well as a standalone programming language with stuff like Node.js. And just learning JavaScript would be really helpful in whatever I do in the future, whether it be web development or software engineering or anything else, as it's a pretty versatile language. What is the most important thing that I learned? I learned the basics of JavaScript, as the name of the tutorial would suggest, and how it's different from other languages. The languages that I know right now include C, C++, Java, and Python, and JavaScript isn't really like any of those. So stuff like the syntax and how JavaScript handles their variables being very loosely typed, and how they handle their objects as well, was different from what I've done before. Learning JavaScript made me, or using JavaScript made me think a little bit differently when compared to other languages, primarily C++, because that's my primary language, or my language of choice. and it has a different toolbox and requires a different skill set in order to utilize effectively. I thought the tutorial, like I said earlier, was pretty good, very good actually, but just the nature of learning an entire language, it can't be done in 3 hours. But I think for the length of time that was allocated for this, it was a good introduction. If I wanted to learn more, or when I want to learn more, I will have to use different resources to actually be able to expand my knowledge or my understanding of JavaScript. But I'm glad to have learned the language. It's pretty efficient use of my time, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to use JavaScript, to be able to understand it in the future, as I won't be using it over the summer. So, alright, so I'm gonna show you a little bit more about my project. I'm gonna do a little demo and explain some of the code that goes behind or runs the project. This is the 4th time I'm recording this, so I apologize if I'm missing something or I repeat myself. The audio hasn't been recording properly, and hopefully it's fixed by now. So, firstly, the game. Of course, it's blackjackjs, so JavaScript. You're playing against one computer opponent, and read the rules, because this crude implementation of blackjack isn't exactly an accurate representation of blackjack, like the actual game of blackjack. So there's a couple of different changes that I had to make in order to finish this on time, and because I'm not that skilled in JavaScript quite yet. So the deck is still standard 52 card deck with 4 suits. The ace is only worth 1 point, and not 1 or 11. Face cards are worth 10 points, so that's your jacks, queens, and kings. There is no dealer, so you don't have to go up against like a house or anything like that. You always go first, so you're dealt the cards first, and then whenever you take an action, the enemy follows you, not the other way around. The only actions are to hit or to stand. There are no doubling, splitting, or surrendering. The opponent can stand at each of your hits, or you can decide to, and they can do that as well after you decide to stop. The goal is still to get to close to 21 as possible, or to 21 as possible. You can still lose, so it's not like a scripted win or anything like that. Whenever you play the game, the card format here is going to be the suit, then the rank. The suits are designated by their initials, so C for club, H for heart, S for spade, and D for diamond. Excuse me. Whenever you press start, it will start the game, or it will restart the game. We have 2 cards here. We have a 6 of diamonds and a queen of hearts. Enemy has a 4 of spades, but we don't see the extra cards, so I think 16 is okay, so I'm going to decide to stop here. And the enemy decided to draw or hit again after I press stand. That's the way I designed the game. So they lost automatically, but I have 16 now. So I'll do it again. So 14, maybe that's not quite enough. I'll ask for another one, but that's too much. I got a king instead, so that's 24, which is over 21. So onto the code. This is a Linux machine, so I use the text editor Vim, and I use the Chrome developer tools, which is really handy, or which has been really handy. It's basically just lets me help debug and see the information in real time. So if I want to look at the deck, or the contents of the deck right now, here it is. If I want to look at the enemy hand, I can do that. This corresponds to what they have. They have 3 cards. The first one, a 2 of spades. It's right there. Enemy score, 18, which is 10 plus 6 plus 2. I can look at my hand, which is 4 diamonds, 10 spades, king of clubs, which corresponds to it right here, and what my current score is, 24. This is really handy, but I had to ask my friend a couple times to help me with this. He's a little bit more skilled in JavaScript than I am, so yeah, that just helped me a couple times. For the actual code, there's 3 main files. There's the index, which is index.html, which is the obviously the web page. There's a CSS for it, and then there's the actual code that runs it. So the decks and the hands are stored in arrays, and then whenever you call start, whenever you press start or restart, it executes the start function. What this does is that it resets the deck and the hands, and then resets the scores as well. This right here builds or inserts a standard 52 card deck into your deck. Standard 52 cards into your deck, and here it deals 2 cards to each player. Me, then the enemy, me, then the enemy, in alternating order. I'll explain what this is in a bit. And this bit right here updates the information on the website. So right here, it's basically just lists the cards and the enemy card and their number of cards. What draw action does is that it's the actual, well, for lack of a better word, action drawing the card. Right here, it chooses a random card from the deck and draws it and puts it into your hand. This is basically the same as this. One's just for the enemy and one's for yourself. Both of them just add the points of the new cards to the score. Then if it's over 21, right here, lose automatically. Otherwise, or the information will still update regardless if you lose. But for here, it will update the enemy number of cards, and the player. There's a little for loop in here because the player can have more than just 2 cards, so it basically just loops through your entire hand and prints out all the valid cards, or all the cards in your hand. Whenever you click hit, it does the hit function, so draw action hand, which is the same thing as before. This draw action enemy, same thing as before, but there's a draw chance right here. Basically, that is a little like function that determines whether the enemy is going to draw. It just chooses a number from 0 to the enemy score, and then if it's less than or equal to 10, then the enemy draws. So basically, this means that the higher the enemy scored, the less likely the enemy is going to draw again. And for the last button, the stand, it, as you can guess, runs the stand function. And this right here just lets the enemy draw one more time after you decide to stop. This boolean right here keeps track of whether the enemy is successful. And right here, it updates the information right here one more time. And then right here, it just basically determines who actually wins, and gives a little score as well. And it pops it up and it displays it in an alert. So one of these. For the actual website, it's just 3 regular buttons for each of these. Each of the information blocks are just paragraphs with an ID that I can call upon them in JavaScript. Right here. The style sheet it's pretty standard. It's pretty similar to what I had before in the last assignment, the web resume. These colors are ripped straight from it, and yeah, I didn't use any classes or IDs because there wasn't really a need to for this simple website. So yeah, I think that's about it. If you want to play this, it's available with this URL right here. That's probably not going to change. And thank you so very much for watching.